Disclaimer. All views expressed on What Makes Us Fire are solely those of the person or persons giving them. What Makes Us Fire does not represent or claim to represent any particular city or fire department, and therefore make the claim that all views and standpoints are affiliated with What Makes Us Fire and with What Makes Us Fire only. Any mention of certain fire departments or cities within the interviews are solely for informational and opinion-based dialogue. In short, if you have a problem with what was published, just say something and don't be a Richard. What is up, What Makes Us Fire family? How you guys doing? Thank you for tuning in. Hey, on this episode, we have a very special guest, someone that's really dear to my heart. He's my good friend, Justin Wilfred. He's a car mechanic. He's a funny guy. He's lovable. And he is going to give us his point of view on what it's like being a friend to firefighters. We all have them. We all sometimes wish we didn't have them. But he gives us the insight on what it took for him to understand and be beneficial to a firefighter as a friend. You guys, his story, and I keep saying about everybody, his story is pretty cool, especially coming from somebody that's not a daughter or a wife, but just a friend. You know, that person we lean on when we have issues with the people that are closest to us. You guys, give Justin Wilfred a warm welcome to What Makes Us Fire. Everything's good. We're recording, by the way.
Oh, cool. Okay, good deal. 3, 2, 1.
3, 2, 1.
Let's go.
All right, man. Thank you so much for coming to do this.
Hey, absolutely, man. Thank you for having me out.
I'm sorry that I didn't have my previous project done before you got here, and so you sat here for about 30 minutes.
No worries.
Taking care of all that. So how you been, man?
I've been doing well. Aside from all the COVID nonsense, I mean, it really, it's work and home and grocery store. That's about it.
Well, we hung out.
Well, yeah, I mean,
not last night.
Two nights ago. Two nights ago.
Ago.
Friday night, we hung out.
Had a nice fucking stogie, man.
Oh, yeah.
Nice
great,
stogie.
Yeah, Drew State, League of number 9, man. It's one of the best sticks out there, I believe. Rated like 94 on one of the scales.
Well, I appreciate you freaking give me one then.
Well, yeah, absolutely, dude.
That and a nice glass of scotch. You had Glenfiddich. Fucking Glenfiddich is great.
Glenfiddich is great. The Lagavulin that you had, man, that one
was really good. Thank you for letting me kill that bottle.
Oh, sure, absolutely, really man. Hey, it's all in good time and good company. So.
Absolutely, man. So obviously we're talking. We know each other.
Yeah, absolutely.
But everybody else out there doesn't know who you are. Just quick heads up, everybody. This is Justin Wilfred. Very good friend of mine. He's that guy in everybody's group of friends that if he doesn't like you, or if you don't like him, or if you have a problem with him, you're actually the one with the problem. He's that lovable guy. Everybody loves him. This guy will give you the shirt off his back. Literally. We met playing softball,
how many
10 years ago?
Yeah, at least 10 years ago. I came out of the field with Christian. Saplicki.
Yeah, Christian showed up, and you were, I don't know how you met him. I don't know.
We were all pool hall junkies.
Pool hall junkies?
Yeah.
Okay.
So.
And then we met playing softball.
Bar Wash Rockers.
That's right. Yeah.
On Hugh and Jeff's team.
On Hugh and Jeff's team, we did that.
Yeah.
But we actually played together before that on Christian's team. Christian had a team with Mike Krell, and we played a couple.
That's right.
That's
right.
We
did play. I did do a couple pickup games on that one.
Yeah. And that was the first time we met. And I mean, no offense to you or anything, but you weren't all that good at the beginning.
Dude, I'm still no good. 10 years later, I'm still no good. Hell, I hurt myself. I got a gnarly shoulder injury. Actually, 1 year ago, let's see, what is today's date? The 8th? No, 9th.
Yeah.
1 year ago, yesterday, I took a really bad fall running to first base. How do you fall running to first base, for one thing? And landed on my shoulder and separated 3 ligaments in my collarbone.
That's right. All right. So I didn't know how you injured yourself. I just know you did.
Yeah.
And I always told you, I remember messaging you on Facebook and stuff. You're going through physical therapy. You're doing a whole lot of other stuff.
Oh, yeah.
But you breaking your shoulder and everything still didn't give you the excuse for 10 years ago.
Yeah, it didn't. But I'm not making excuses.
Here's the thing, though.
I was the beer guy.
Yeah, you were the beer guy. But here's
guy.
The thing, though. Like, having you on the team and everything, like, when everybody was getting frustrated and upset or pissed off or whatever the case may be, if you came up to bat, if you made a good play, or the inning was over and we were coming to the dugout, you're the guy that made everybody smile.
Oh, yeah. Dude, got you, man.
Even when you weren't trying, even when you weren't trying, you were just the guy that you brought light to the team. For as dark as you are, you brought a lot of light to the team.
Well, since everybody's listening and not watching, I mean, hopefully you can find this on YouTube whenever it gets uploaded. But,
it actually gets uploaded usually a day later after the podcast goes up.
Yeah,
because there's a few more little editing. But What Makes Us Fire on YouTube.
Cool. And you'll actually see the video and see how dark I actually am.
Yeah, so I had to up the brightness just so you can see him as much as you are now. But now I look way bright.
Right, he looks like Josh.
It's really hard to get that lighting just right with you in here.
Yeah, it's okay. We'll make it happen.
But anyway, no, you always brought brightness to the team. You always brought brightness to just people around you, man. You're an uplifting person.
Well, thank you. I try to be, man. There's not enough time in this world to be brought down, even though there is going to be a certain time and place for sadness, sadness and mourning, and it's okay to be sad. It's not that it's not okay, but I think it's better to be more uplifting and accepting and outgoing. You catch more flies with honey than you do, trash.
Yeah, but honey makes things sticky. That's my devil's advocate coming out. I'm sorry, man. That's my devil's advocate coming out. I do that a lot.
There's nothing wrong with a sticky situation. There's nothing wrong with a sticky situation. You got to be able to know how to get yourself into them and out of them as well. But I believe if you come into every situation with a good intention, even though, yes, there are going to be some out there that don't have good intentions. I mean, there's evil in this world, man.
Yeah.
There's evil all around us. It's just you got to pick and choose what you can or can't have it, or can or don't want in your life. We all have the ability. Not everybody has this dark gray cloud following us. There's going to be times in life that you come across things, you think that, man, or bad things happen in threes, or, every day something or another. Nah, there's always going to be that silver lining to a dark cloud.
Yeah, well, and then, like I said before, when we were getting the shit beat out of us or whatever, it's like that, and that dark cloud was just on the team, you were the silver lining. You were the you were the humor. You were just a good spirit, and I guess that's why I figured. I mean, because there's some of those players that we just don't hang out with anymore. They were just there to play softball. They were teammates. They were greatest teammates, but outside of that, man, they're just not fun to hang out with, you just didn't get along with them. But I remember the first time I actually ever, outside of softball, right? Because softball, think of how we played softball like it was a job, right?
Yeah, semi.
So obviously it was a recreational thing, but the people that we were involved with when we went and played softball were like our coworkers, and you only want to hang out with a few of them afterwards. Well, I remember the first time I invited you to do anything. I think it was Thanksgiving time, Christmas time. I invited you over to our home. And what my wife and I started doing years back is we started what we call the Stragglers Thanksgiving. Mm-hmm. You remember that?
Oh, yeah.
Basically, the idea is anybody that doesn't have a place to go for Thanksgiving and or doesn't want to go to the place they normally have to go or see the people they normally have to see, and they just would rather hang out with friends. And we are literally open to anybody. They don't just have to be friends. Like, we put it out there. If you don't have a place to go for Thanksgiving, I make a 20-pound turkey. We make a shit ton of stuffing and everything else.
There's food and alcohol to be had.
Exactly. Everywhere. And it's just for people to have somewhere to be. I did it for firefighters that were new to the Texas area, and like say they were rookies or something, and they didn't have any family in the area. Hey, come to my place.
Right. You gotta have that open door.
Yeah.
You gotta.
So I remember that was the first time I actually ever invited you outside of softball to go do something. And the look on your face was like you were real surprised at the fact that I even did that.
Oh, man, I love having invite you out to places. I take that for somebody to invite you into their home, a stranger per se, or just a softball buddy, but for to be invited into somebody's home, that's personal, man. And to be able to extend that invite, especially nowadays with as many strangers or bad people or whatever, you're inviting them into your house. I mean, this is where you live. This is where you and your wife stay. This is where you raise your kids and your animals and everything. And for you to invite somebody into your home, that's a big thing.
Well, the way we look at it is the way me and my wife look at it, especially me, is that if you're a friend of mine and I consider you a part of my life, obviously there's some parts of the life that are almost, okay, I'm not going to share that. But
well, yeah.
My home is a shelter. My friends are shelters for me as well when I'm in the dumps. Mm-hmm. But my home is a shelter I do not mind sharing with my friends.
Right. Oh, that's great. Likewise.
Yeah.
But
after that, we started becoming more friends, and I want people to know why I've actually invited you onto the show, because the show is What Makes Us Fire.
Right.
And you're not a firefighter.
No, I'm not. Obviously, if you can see the video.
Yeah, you're not a full-time EMT. Like, you don't have any EMT certification above first responder.
Yeah, above first responder, BLS, AED. A little bit of my history and background. Both my parents are in the medical field.
I'm going to stop you real quick because we're going to still go a little bit more. Okay. You have a couple of friends that are in the civil service industry.
I have a lot of friends that are in civil service, whether it be fire police, and active military. So
good. But the fact is what I'm trying to say is that your profession is a mechanic, car mechanic.
Yes.
And so being directly involved within civil service is not really where
No.
So I want to get your perspective,
sure,
and your background on what it means to be a part of the fire life, because you have friends that are firefighters. Absolutely. Like myself, because you have parents that were involved in civil service, because I think that there's something there that friends bring to the table to firefighters. Obviously, this is what makes us fire, so I'm going to stick to the fire side of it. Right, but I think it's pretty broad when it comes to civil services. We want friends that are outside that realm for a reason.
Yeah.
Right? We have to, it's not wrong to only have friends that are in civil service, but for me, I have to have something outside of the job as well, friends, hobbies, stuff like that, because
I think it brings a healthy aspect to it. Because if you completely surround yourself, your role as a firefighter is very stressful. There's so many things that for what you guys see, especially if not only if you're a fire, but you're a paramedic EMT, which I'm not sure.
I'm intermediate. I got my intermediate.
So you have your intermediate. So you still respond to.
Let me rephrase that just so I say that right. I have my intermediate training. I'm not certified. I don't want anybody out there to think that I'm claiming to be certified. I went through all the training. I just didn't get the little card that said.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, it's not written
anyway. Sorry. I just wanted to make sure I clear that up.
So for a few of my for a friend of mine that's in Houston Fire. Okay.
Yeah. Don't say his name.
No. I'm not gonna mention any name. Yeah. A friend of mine that's in Houston Fire. He also, I have multiple friends in Houston Fire, but they have to ride on a box's ambulance. And then also they got to ride, either an engine operator or just a regular firefighter. So it just depends on what shift that they're working. So they also have to be paramedic, and then they also have to be a firefighter as well. Mm-hmm. So majority of the time, especially I know this much in Houston, and this doesn't happen anywhere, is that a firefighter is going to roll up. Usually it's going to be the first person on the scene. Usually between and And when you're the first person on the scene, sometimes scenes can be pretty gruesome. And so the things that you see, they'll affect you, you know?
Mm-hmm.
It really, really will affect you, because once you've seen it, you cannot unsee it. And sometimes those images are burned into the back of your head, and the littlest things can trigger it.
Yeah, absolutely it does. And I know with your outlook on life in general, being able to come out of work where I did see something bad, or anybody in that, situation, when they come out of work, they want to hang out with a friend like you. They want to hang out with that guy that brings the bright light to just life in general,
Well, thank you.
friendship and stuff. But I interrupted you about your background, and I'm sorry, but
No
I
worries.
just wanted to make sure that, I wanted to make sure people know that you are a friend of a firefighter.
Right. Many firefighters.
Many firefighters. Well, and for me, you're my friend. I consider you a brother, right? Like we would do anything for each other whenever we can.
Yes, sir.
So go ahead and go on with your background. You started off with your parents, and I interrupted you. What was it about your parents?
Oh, no. I'm trying to remember. My parents, they're not necessarily first responders. Both my parents are ingrained in the medical field. So mom was a nurse for almost 40 years for Bayshore Hospital. Dad's fixing to retire from UTMB right now, senior lab manager.
Wow.
And so it was always ingrained in me to go into the medical field, and I can't stand the sight of blood, guts, and gore. So I just kind of went to grease, gas, and oil instead. And,
hey, man,
and working on cars.
That's just as bad.
I'm a doctor of cars and not of people.
I can tell you right now, it's probably just as complicated and just as frustrating.
Let me tell you what. The good thing about it is working on cars is if I make a mistake, I can just get it towed back in. You make a mistake on a human being, there's sometimes no coming back from that.
And it's happened.
And it's happened.
Yeah.
Yep.
So your parents were very involved in the medical field. Do you think maybe having them push you to be in that medical field was just because they're in the medical field, or was it a cultural thing? Or
it was both. It was more along the lines of they came from India in 1977.
So you're first generation.
I am first generation.
Oh,
yeah. My brother
awesome.
and I are both first generation here in this country, and so it was a learning process as far as trying to being raised by my parents in a place that they have never been, but only have heard of and possibly studied slightly while they were growing up, and trying to adapt to all the different cultures in Texas, let alone Pasadena, Texas, where I grew up. And being the brown kid, I mean, a few miles away, I'll put it like this, and in the early 80s, late 70s, early 80s, a few miles away from where my parents decided to set up home in Pasadena was the main office for the Ku Klux Klan off of Red Bluff.
Oh.
Dad walked in. Not that I'm promoting anything, especially KKK. But they were actually nice to my dad because they knew he was a foreigner. And he walked into their office. This is a story he tells me. I don't know how true it is, but he said he walked into their office and asked for directions, and they pointed him in the right direction. Dad used to work over off of the Beltway. Well, which it wasn't even the Beltway back then. This is like the late 80s. I don't even think Beltway 8 was a toll road. It was just a 2-lane highway like Old 90 or something. Anyhow.
Yeah, just for people that don't know, we're talking roads in Houston, Texas. So
yeah. These are state highways. Anyways, he used to work at a hospital over there in Pasadena, and the Ku Klux Klan grand office was down the road over off of Red Bluff, and Dad managed to stroll into the wrong office one day, but he's still around today, so nothing happened. Like I said, either way, I'm not sure where I was going with that one.
I don't know. I was letting you roll with it.
Yeah, no.
No, but we were talking about how it was, if it was cultural or if it was just because that they were in that. Said they came from India, where they lived, it was almost a little bit of a culture shock in that. I think you were going with the whole learning the culture shock thing because absolutely. He walked into that.
Yeah, that's where I was headed through. As far as the culture shock, I I had to appease my parents as far as being the good little Indian boy that they're raising in a completely new country. But then again, I also had to fit in with the rest of the kids that I'm going to school with.
Right.
Luckily, Pasadena was somewhat of a melting pot. So there was all races, and I got to be very well-rounded between blacks, and whites, and Asians, and Hispanics, other Indian kids, very few, because most of them ended up in Clear Lake versus Pasadena.
Right.
But I think it made me a good person because I love everybody, man.
Right.
I don't see, not that I want to take away anything from anybody's heritage, but I don't see a race. I don't see a religion. I don't see a color. And nowadays you almost don't see man or woman. I just see a person. And if you don't want to be called a person, then I just see a body or whatever, a being.
Well, they're human beings.
Human beings.
It's that scientifically you're a human being.
Right. An organism.
First and foremost.
Some sort of living organism. We'll generalize it down to a living organism that can communicate to another living organism.
I'm good with human being.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. In today's world, it's hard to be quote unquote PC and make everybody happy. So I do my best to appease. And
did you find it hard, not only having, because you said it earlier, being the good Indian boy, but then also learning American customs as well? Because when people come from other countries, they bring their customs with them, right? And that's what makes America so great, is that you get this huge melting pot of different customs. They start intermingling, and then America almost comes up with their own custom.
Right.
Did you find it hard, or almost like the customs you were learning at public school and then the customs you're learning at home were clashing?
Absolutely. It's the way my friends act. Like, we'll take it to something as simple as a BB gun. Okay. Almost every kid, by the time they were probably about 8 or 9, had a Red Ryder. They pretty much had a Red Ryder. I begged and pleaded and asked, and I think the most thing I ever got was a slingshot by the time I was maybe like 12 or 13.
Oh wow.
Yeah, I got a marksman slingshot, and the only reason why I even got that is because my brother had saved up some money somehow, went to Walmart and bought it because he was 16 at the time and he could buy a slingshot without my parents ever knowing.
Right.
So that's the only reason why I even got that at the time. Mom and dad were not happy about it, but it was just some of those cultural things. I got to go to friends' houses, and their mom and dad would be like, "Did you talk to your parents and see if it's okay for you to shoot the pellet gun in the backyard?" It's like, I did. I promise. It's like, okay, but everybody believed the little Indian kid because he was so innocent. He's not going to tell a lie. He's a foreigner. But
did you? And I'm sure you have. Did you experience any type of? I'm sure you probably didn't realize it when you were younger, but maybe when you're a little bit older, racism in general.
Oh, dude, all the time, man. I mean, we can edit this out if you want to.
But, no. Everything. I mean, if you're comfortable about talking about it, we're going to talk.
I'm completely comfortable. It's just as far as if you wanted to bleep some of the things out. But growing up, being called a sand, I mean, this is uneducated. Uneducated people are using this terminology and calling me certain names, the stinky little Indian kid, the stupid fucking sand. They're words, and what was the thing I always used to tell myself? Sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. That was this stupid little poem that you kept on having to repeat to yourself, and boy, let me tell you, you can only suppress so much of that before you just kind of snap. So luckily I have good outlets now to be able to talk about a lot of stuff from my past and release a lot of that stuff. But man, dude,
how did that make you feel being called these names? Did you even know what it meant back then?
It took a little bit.
Did you have to
I had friends that would explain to me, and you pick up a lot of things. I had to learn very quickly context of people's conversations.
Right.
And I had to growing up without, of course, I didn't grow up without, I grew up without internet. I grew up without cable.
Mm-hmm.
I had antenna TV. We had probably about 5 channels that came in, 5, 6 channels that came in on there. But I had to be able to pick up, I didn't know what a cuss word was. I didn't know what, there's just so many American cultural things I had to kind of like completely pick up. And then so coming to find out what racism actually was, being discriminated against just because if somebody doesn't like the color of my skin or just because I am different, it made you feel pretty terrible. Once you finally figured out what was being done to you. Because I mean, you could be the there's a meme that's out there that shows it's like nobody smiles harder than a Spanish guy that doesn't understand English when you're talking to him. Yeah. And so that's all I could really do back then is like, okay, I hear these words and all I can do is smile and kind of laugh and nod and go, yeah, sure. Okay. I'll be that. But then once you find out the real definition of those things and you kind of think back and go, wow, that's pretty harsh. And
how do you think that helped you growing up in developing your personality?
As far as developing my personality, man, it went to go along the lines just like there's no room in this world for hate.
I know a lot of people that would disagree with you right now, especially nowadays. But there's no room for hate, and it's not that I'm completely open arms. There's a fine line between that, man. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to open up my. Like I said, it's a real fine line, and you kind of have to be picky and choosy, which is it goes against what I say as far as there's no hate, but you got to pick your battles, man. I mean, you really do. You got to be able to pick your friends and pick your battles, because what it was 30 years ago for me, there was probably the hate and the evilness was not as rampant as it is today. Today, it's nobody cares, man. I mean, there's 15-year-old kids, 14-year-old kids walking around with handguns ready to pull a trigger on you because they like your Jordans. That's evil, bro. And that had to be taught. They had to learn that from somebody. And it's wow. That was so you would say you probably used how you were treated to, it was more of a, okay, don't do that. Don't be that.
Right. You
okay.
Don't want to be that. You look at it. I'll give it up. I'm the baby of the family. I have an older brother.
Okay.
And so my older brother, he set a lot of, he set the path for me, man. He set the path for me through all my school, because all my I was never known as Justin in school. Mm-hmm. I was like, hey, that's Steve's brother.
Yeah. Yeah. But, it's funny because my siblings used to tell me that too, that they got, and it wasn't until I pretty much graduated high school that it stopped for them. But growing up and going through school and stuff, is like, oh, you're Jay's little sister.
Yeah.
Oh, you're Jay's little brother. I went by Jay in high school.
No, yeah.
And yeah, so I get that. I don't get it because I never experienced it, but I heard how frustrating that can be. Because you almost lose a little bit of your own identity.
You don't have an identity.
Exactly.
You don't have an identity because now it's just all you're doing is you're being associated. Hey, that's Steve's little brother. That's Steve's little brother. I'm like, I got a name. But the thing is, all through from elementary all the way up through high school, my brother and I had pretty much the same teachers. We even worked together at the movie theater. So all the way up until I was at least 18. Finally, after I turned 18, I could go get a job at a shop, and I started college, and I went a completely different route than him. So I finally developed my own identity at 18.
That's good. Well, so we'll get there. We'll get to that point. So what got you into you grew up, you've developed your personality, and now you're starting to really dive into what you want to do as a profession, what makes you happy. How did you get into, or how did you find out that working on cars is like something that was like that? I mean, because you're really good at it. With all our friends, it's like, hey, I got something wrong with my car. Let me give Justin a quick text real quick. Hey, Justin, my car's making this sound. What does that mean? And you're just like, oh, it might be this. Bring it over. It's like,
yeah. Man, I have always had mechanical aptitude.
When did you learn that? Like, when did you find out?
At a very young age. I was the kid that took apart Dad's drill, and not that my dad has any mechanical aptitude. He was just kind of like trying to be the good Texan, and and trying to fit in. And he went to Montgomery Ward's back in the day and bought himself a lawnmower, and went to the old Sears and Roebuck and bought a Black & Decker drill. And I was a kid that took apart all that stuff and see if I could make it better and make it faster or make it whatever. I don't know why it was ingrained in. Actually, you know what? I do know where it started. I think I was about 6 years old, and one of my neighbors down the street, Dennis, I can't pronounce his last name. I know what it's spelled. Anyways, he was building a Volkswagen dune buggy.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, super, super cool. And, at 6 years old, I rode my little bicycle down there and hung out, and I was just like, wow, this is so cool to see somebody take a frame and put an engine in it and paint it and do all this stuff. And I hung out there through the entire summer while he was building this thing. And I believe that, and not only that, he was so accepting and inviting as far as, hey, this kid wants to learn about something. He's here. He set a really good example as far as teaching and being not I wouldn't even call it a mentor, but just, hey, man, this little kid wants to hang around, and not in a creepy way because he had a wife and he had kids of his own or anything, but he's interested in what I'm doing. So here, look, let's show him what's up.
It's crazy where you can find those small, and they are mentors, really.
Yeah.
Those small mentors when you're just being a kid and all of a sudden somebody notices your interest and actually helps you grow that interest. They water that interest instead of saying, you know what, kid, you're too young. Well, hey, you're bothering me, back up. But he actually took the time and was patient.
Right. Very patient. Very patient. Even, he didn't hand it to me, but I still have this book because he left it in my mailbox. It was an old, I got to find this thing, man, but it's an old VW book. And it has pictures and it has information and history on Volkswagen and, all the Volkswagen engines, transmissions, the whole nine yards. And I read it, when I was like 7 or 8 years old by the time, I read it. Dennis ended up moving to Michigan to be an engineer. I believe he was an engineer for one of the big three, GM, Chrysler, or Ford.
Nice.
But yeah, that's probably where, it kind of lit the fire. And here I am.
Yep. And now, so you went to school for all that?
I did. I went to San Jac, went through the General Motors ASEP program. It's Automotive Service Excellence Program, is ASEP.
Mm-hmm.
Two-year degree, transferable, all the stuff. I've actually, in 1 week, on the 15th of August, I will celebrate my 20 years as a professional.
Damn.
In this industry.
20 years.
20 years.
How old are you now?
I just turned 38 in March.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Wow, man. So 18 years old.
Yeah,
Dang,
18.
Dude. Yeah, you got an early start. Actually, that's really good that you got an early start. I got a little bit of a later start. I didn't even know what I wanted to do. I didn't have that 6-year-old light bulb moment that being a firefighter is what I want to do. I remember
maybe we all thought about, in elementary school, I think everybody was visited by, a police, a fire, or something.
I remember those, right? But it was never like, oh yeah, I want to be a firefighter. Like, seriously. And I told the story on the first podcast. I don't know if you've heard it yet, but I didn't find out I wanted to be a firefighter until I was like 21, 22. That's when the light bulb hit me. Like, yeah, that's what I was meant to do.
Right.
But it took me until I was 22 years old to figure that out.
There's nothing wrong in it.
No, there is nothing wrong with it. But I've noticed that some, and especially within the firemen, that a lot of these firefighters and people that are in the job either had a family member that was in it and they're following the footsteps, or they just knew at a young age that this was a path that they wanted to take. Well, for me, it wasn't that at all. For me, I wanted to be an actor.
Yeah.
I wanted to be an actor. I wanted to be on TV. I wanted to be in the movies.
Yeah.
I love being in front of people. I love being on stage. I love invoking an emotion by being somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I always wanted to do. But I didn't really push and pursue as hard as I could. And then I literally stumbled into the fire realm, and it literally, again, first podcast, go back and listen to it.
Yeah.
It was the first day of EMT basic class, and they had us open a book, and there's, the graphic pictures of, guys' arms, avulsions, breaks, bones sticking through skin and stuff. But then I was more interested in the text right next to that, teaching you how to mitigate that person with that injury from either losing that arm or losing their life or slowing the bleeding, or basically manipulating the human body to keep it survive, to keep it alive.
It was your service manual. Just like I got a service manual for cars that tells me how to fix it.
It was like the book Dennis left for you in your mailbox, right? All of a sudden you read it and you're just like, this is something that I'm going to love forever.
Yeah.
And I opened that book and I was just like, I'm hooked. This is what I was meant to do.
Right.
And it was that moment at 22 years old. But I think the majority of people that get into this line of work have some type of influence prior to that. It's not, I think I'm a rare occasion where you stumble into it.
Right.
And especially as late as I did.
Most of the firefighters and civil service that I volunteer with, it's a lineage. Their dad was a firefighter, or their dad was a police officer. Their grandfather was. It went down year by year, almost similar to the same thing with a lot of friends that are in the military. Their father or grandfather or whatever served, in Vietnam or in Korea or in the Gulf War. And it went down, passed down. And
I thought that was going to be me too, because a lot of my family was Navy. And my dad retired Navy. My mom was in the Navy. That's when my dad met my mom. My stepmother, my stepfather was in the Marines. Uncles, all Navy. Aunts, all Navy. So that was something that was pushed on me for a long time. And I thought, if my acting didn't work out, that's what I was going to fall back into. But I literally did everything I could. That was my last option. Not that I couldn't do it.
Yeah.
It's just I saw what it can do to the family, and it put a bad taste in my mouth.
Yeah.
And I have the utmost respect for everybody that gets into the service to serve our country, to help protect the American citizens, us, that allows us to do
this right here.
We want to do this right here. Exactly. But I didn't have that light bulb moment at a young age to where this was the path that I was going to choose. And it sounds like you had it.
Well, it wasn't necessarily what it did. I think that 6-year-old me, that sparked an interest. I don't believe anybody really knows. We can all say we knew what we wanted to do when we were in kindergarten. Dude, we were kids, man. Half of us could barely wipe our own ass, let alone figure out. Figure out what we wanted to be when we grew up. And I think everybody had, and not to take anything away from civil service firefighters or from what you do for a living, but I can almost guarantee you somewhere between 50 to 75 or 80% of kids, or guys and girls in general, will go, what do you want to be when you grow up? I want to be a firefighter, because it's cool. I got to spend, luckily for me, growing up in Pasadena is a volunteer firefighter city.
Just a couple of years ago, it was, and it still might be, but I'd have to go back and look, but Pasadena is actually the largest volunteer department in the nation.
It is. In
the nation.
And one of the best equipped also.
Yeah, the largest volunteer fire department. It's literally only 15 minutes up the road from here.
And so I spent 23 years of my life growing up in Pasadena. Luckily for me, where I grew up off of right down the road, less than a mile away from Station 7.
Okay.
And so there was a lot of my neighbors that were firefighters. The house that was literally 3 or 4 houses down from me from where I grew up burnt down twice. Yeah, that's a different story. And so I got to watch my volunteer fire department in action more than once on the same street. Growing up being a Boy Scout, we did a lot of field trips and and hanging outs at the fire station. And not only that, it was the fire station. It was an open area. You know, the garage doors are always open on the fire station. If kids, we'd ride our bikes up there and fill up our bike tires because, you know, they were low on air. The guys would be out there washing the fire truck. You'd go and hang out. You get a free tour of the station. You get a free tour of the fire truck and all the apparatus. And on a hot summer day, you know, they'd fire up the water truck and spray everybody down.
And that's awesome. So let's get into that. How did that shape your feelings towards the fire service? I mean, obviously they kept doing these really cool things for you, so it was a good thing, right?
It was a great thing. It was a great thing to be able to see all this stuff and see what they do. Unfortunately for me, I didn't go in, and I don't want to call it unfortunately, but it was my upbringing. I was more along the lines of, let me please my parents. And when I say I wanted to be a firefighter or a police officer or go into the civil service or join the military, I was struck down with, no, you can't do that. And of course, me being the obedient child that I was, per se, I didn't go into those fields. So I did a disservice to myself more than anything.
Do you think if they would have told you no, you still wouldn't have become a mechanic?
They did tell me no many a times.
Well, yeah, and becoming a firefighter and stuff in military. But do you think had they not told you no, had they been?
Oh, had they not told me no? Yeah. Had they not told me, yeah, there's a great possibility. There's a great possibility I could have pursued something like that. But you know what? You look at it, hindsight's 20/20.
Yeah, obviously.
Yeah, hindsight's always 20/20. You know, it's just something that I've completely lived off of as far as that phrase going. But yeah, I mean, we could go back and say that, you know, if this, what, and when didn't happen, would it have changed? Of course, a lot of things could have changed. But I'm not disappointed in myself for not having become a civil service member, a firefighter, police officer, or anything like that. I'm pretty content and happy with my life that I have now. Being an automotive mechanic has done me well in life. It's given me the opportunity to meet and interact with different people. It's given me the time to do a lot of things that I want to do. It's given me a great life to own a house and have a bunch of toys and have a different walk of life than my friends. Yeah. You know, it creates, once again, that melting pot that I was so lucky to have grown up in. It individualizes all of us, and
everybody has a car. It's a necessity of life.
Yeah,
it's just who we are. So you're going to meet a bunch of different people.
Absolutely.
Do you remember when or who was the first person you were actually really close to that was a civil servant, that was a firefighter in general, really?
Oh, wow. Okay. First person I was really close to, Josh Smith. Wow, I know a lot of Joshes, apparently.
Yeah.
I know a lot of Joshes. Anyways, Josh Smith, his father actually was, I want to say, either a chief or a lieutenant for the volunteer fire department in Pasadena, and specifically for Station 7.
So he was the first person that you were actually pretty close to.
Well, it was it was Josh Smith. We I know that sounds so general. I promise you it's not general, but it was him. We were friends in elementary school. Mm-hmm. And so we lived in the same neighborhood, and we literally walked, we walked to school every day, and we walked by Station 7. And so on the way back, we'd pop in, say hey, whatever, hang out, and then end up all the way back at home. And so it was, as far as that being the first recollection as far in being close to anybody in the fire industry, that probably happened somewhere in elementary school. So probably around the 8 or 9 year old.
How do you think, or do you think it helped shape you or your opinion of the fire service in any way? Being that young, I know it's kind of hard. That young firefighters are cool.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what it was. It was this really awesome cool factor, because it's like, wow, you get to play on this shiny truck. You get to slide down this pole. You get to, play with the fire hose, and here's a siren. Everything was so cool back then. And I'm easily amused when it comes down to a lot of stuff like that. But even then, later on in life, the fire industry or anything like that fire industry or civil service didn't really play a role in my life from that portion onward. It wasn't until this was December, I want to say 12th, December 12th, 1999.
Okay. Wow,
Okay.
that's very specific.
And it's very, the reason why it's very specific, and Josh, you don't probably know, you don't know this about me. It was a night, and there was a party going on, high school party going on, and I was over out in South Houston, and a friend of mine who is now a police officer, we'll leave his name out of it. We had left to go to the store to go pick up cigarettes or something. I can't remember what it was. And so we went down College Avenue to I-45. College turns into Airport, and so we were on the eastbound, or the east side of 45 in College, and the corner store was closed. Well, while we were getting back into the truck, we hear some ruckus going on, and it's tires screeching. Obviously, there is a motor vehicle accident on the other side. Just like, all right, cool, we're headed that direction anyway. Lo and behold, we pull up, and a car traveling southbound at a high rate of speed managed to plow through the intersection, and it was a single motor vehicle accident. So apparently they lost control or hit the curb or something. One led to one thing or another. The vehicle ended upside down and wrapped around the signage pole. So it was on fire. Myself and my buddy show up on scene or whatever, and of course we see it and we assess it, and it's just like, wow, okay, the car's on fire. Okay, yeah, there's got to be a driver, and then of course we can hear a passenger. It's unfortunate the driver perished.
Mm-hmm.
The passenger ended up in the back seat of this car, and after I had used the fire extinguisher from the police officer that showed up to put out the fire underneath, or that the car was on fire in the engine bay, we broke out the back window and extracted the female passenger
Mm-hmm.
from this vehicle. Of course, waiting on fire and EMS and everybody else to show up. It was life-changing.
Mm-hmm.
It really was life-changing. I ended up the following year, there was a police officer that showed up the first police officer that showed up on scene, ended up taking, of course, all my information. They wanted to take me downtown to make a statement, which since I didn't see the actual accident, I rolled up on it. My statement didn't really matter. There was a rush of emotions from helping somebody to loss of life to everything. And I gained a complete respect for every first responder on scene, because I wasn't even really involved in that feeling of what you get and what you see. I'll never unsee what I saw.
Right.
In there. And then when we got the girl out, and then the driver was like, hey man, are we going to get him out too? Are we going to get him out too? And it's like, nah, we ain't going to get him out. We're going to wait for, the extraction team. And it's just
Right.
like, whoa, wow, dude. I mean, I think I'm pretty dark in this video if you could ever see it, but I think I went as pale as Josh, sitting next to me.
I'm only pale because it's really bright. Right?
A few months later, I get a letter in the mail from City of Houston, and I was afraid to open it up because I thought it was a warrant or a ticket or me not showing up to court. And finally, I got the balls and I opened it up, and the first officer on scene that had taken all my information, nominated me for a public service award from the City of Houston.
Oh, nice.
And so in March of 2000, I was recognized at the Houston Police Officers High School down off of Shepherd and North Durham somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
I was actually on television. I was interviewed by somebody on Channel 2. I can't remember which. I think there's a video of it somewhere. But I got to meet, I believe it was Police Chief Brown. It was Police Chief Brown for the Houston Police Department. He handed me my award. There was nothing but other police officers there. And, I felt quite out of place being a civilian in a room full of people that were not civilians.
Right. So, yeah, man, congratulations on getting that award. And trust me, when we see the general public jump in and do something like that, we know that's not the norm for them. So the police officer that was on scene, the fact that he recognized that for you is actually good on him, because we know that the general public doesn't see and deal with that kind of stuff like we do on the normal basis. So when they see it and you do spring into action and you do help, it's actually, for the general public, it's actually that's a big deal. Do you think going through that experience and having that experience helped you better understand firefighters and first responders? And then when you have actually close friends that are that, maybe actually helps you better understand why sometimes they'll have certain mood changes or how they are sometimes?
Oh yeah, absolutely, man.
Do you think
100%?
Do you think that people, the general public, they don't have that experience, will never understand, or they only understand to a certain extent?
They only understand what the media allows them to understand.
Okay.
That's the key thing. Because not only have I been on scene with FD and PD, I've also been on ride-alongs. I've had the ride-alongs with the police department. Really, another good friend of mine who is a police officer, it was his Christmas present to me to take me on ride-alongs.
Oh, nice.
Yes. And so that was usually, so it was either on Christmas Eve or on Christmas Day, I get to go on a ride-along, and to see him switch from my buddy that I'm used to sitting around drinking beers with, shooting shit and having a good time, to flip that switch, literal flip the switch, and go from being, hey, that's my buddy, to holy shit, that's a police officer. And going, wow, you literally have to flip script. You have to turn it on and off. Now, I don't know exactly if that's the same way as a fireman or a firewoman, but I saw it on the police side, and I'm sure that you have to be able to, as a firefighter, you have to be able to hang that up before you walk in the door. You can't bring that home with you.
Yeah, there is definitely a switch that happens when, shift change happens and now you're on the truck. There is definitely all right, when that tone drops, it's work, right. And I try to explain this in one of my other interviews with another guest I had on, is that it's not to dehumanize the person we're helping, but we understand that they're human beings. We understand that they're their help. But when the shit hits the fan and the job needs to be done,
you got to get after it.
It's at that point, it's like, it's for me, and I can't explain it for everybody else, but I think the general consensus is that we're able to disassociate that human aspect. And now this is the job. This is what we have to do to make things better. And then once everything's done, said and done, our job's done, we did everything we could do to mitigate the situation, hopefully with a good outcome. Now we fall back, and then we get back into that human mode.
Yep.
And it's like, oh man,
yeah,
that was one hell of a call, like, holy crap. But of course, when we get there, we get on scene, and it's weird because it literally happens as soon as the truck doors open. We'll drive up to the scene and we're like, holy fuck, do you see that thing? Yeah. Oh my God, that looks horrible. Doors open. Okay, get this, get that. You go check that car. I'll go check this. Everything now is like job.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's hard to explain. And I think you being able to actually see that in first person, and even actually, you probably don't even realize it, but when you went on that call, or when you were helping with that motor vehicle accident, you probably don't even realize it because your adrenaline was going so fast and high. You were just doing things to help.
Yeah.
It wasn't, if I don't do this, something might happen. It was just, no, I'm just going to do.
Right.
And then once everything was said and done, you go back and you go like, holy shit, I did that.
Yeah, I did that. And you don't realize the risk that you put yourself at in doing those things.
No, you don't realize it. Not in the time.
It was call it a selfless act. completely selfless act because you didn't think about yourself. You just went and did to try and help somebody else.
And the reason why when the general public does do that is like for us, we have a lot of training. Police officers, firefighters, we have a lot of training. So when we go to something like that, we do all those things without thinking, but we do them with that training in our back pocket, right?
And we just do it without thinking.
You just do it without thinking. So we do these steps and processes that keep us as safe as possible, right? We understand when we have to take a little bit more risk. We understand that, and we consciously process that. But for us, we process it like on a snap.
You're trained.
Yeah, because we're trained.
Spent months of training,
we know
or years of training.
We understand if we cut this window, we want to make sure we cut the window like this. That way when we go in, we don't cut ourselves or we don't hurt somebody when we're pulling them out. The general public doesn't get all that, right? No. So, but it's literally a snap. It's almost like second nature because we've been trained.
Right.
So when the general public jumps in and helps, they don't have that training. So they are a little bit more susceptible to getting injured when helping. And when we see it all the time, you hear about the guy that jumps into the burning house to save the kid, but he comes out and he burned himself and stuff like that. Whereas if it was a firefighter, he might have been able to evaluate the situation a little bit better. Even without his gear, he would have known, okay, I got to stay a little bit lower. This is where I want to enter. Whereas the general public's like, oh, I hear screaming from this room. I'm going to go straight into that room. You know what I mean? They don't evaluate it and break it down like somebody that has training does.
Right.
And in saying all that, the fact that you were able to go through that, I think, and the reason why I asked if it did probably help you is because I think it did help you better understand our life, how we deal with things after the fact.
Yeah.
So your first close friend, it sounds like one of your first close friends, it sounds like you were more on the PD side. Do you remember when having your first close friend that was a firefighter?
Yeah. And so many a nights, his friend of mine that works for HFD, we'll leave him a name, but we spent many a nights, and this wasn't until later on, we were at the bar all the time, hanging out. Granted, he's married with a kid now, but we were partying every night. It was easy for me to go out and hang out and have beers all the time with them because, of course, being on an FD schedule, you're on a 24-hour or 48-hour rotation. And so it was easy on his nights off. I didn't care. We'd go close down the bar. After we closed down the bar, we'd go out and have a 12-pack of Dos Equis and keep the night going or whatever. And the stories that I hear from his line of work, it's just like, wow, dude, you need to talk to somebody. We need to keep on talking and get this out. And only until after that, it's just, he was probably one of my closest friends in FD, and it was just.
Do you feel like when he did start talking to you about all this shit and started basically divulging these feelings on certain calls and how they made him feel, do you think maybe that obviously you're his close friend, so you probably didn't really care too much, but do you think maybe that was a responsibility that was almost thrown on you without really knowing that, hey, I'm his friend, I should be prepared to start hearing from this and be there for him? Or was it like all of a sudden you started talking about it and you're like, what do I do with that?
No, it's not what do I do with it, because I'm different, I guess, from other people, because I'm always going to open up and listen. If you have, like, say, if you have something going on in your life, and I can stop my life for a little bit and listen to what you got going on, because if you're going to talk to me about something that you wouldn't normally talk about, obviously you need to get it out, and if you needed to use me as an outlet, then so be it. Use me as an outlet.
Yeah. Well, friends do that in general, right? Yeah. With our day-to-day problems. But I guess I'm wanting to be a little bit more specific when it comes to, the civil service, the fire part.
As far as the gory detail.
Yeah. Because you're hearing these stories that the general public, they only, see on media or movies or stuff, and it's all right. It's all hyped up, but then it almost becomes real when you have a friend that's a firefighter or a cop. Right. They're like, hey man, I just saw this, blah, blah, blah. I know you're open to hearing from your friends.
I was taken aback quite a bit.
Do you feel like it was a responsibility you weren't quite ready for the first time?
Yeah, yes and no. It was more like, wow, it opened up your eyes to go, it's like, okay, you're talking about this. It's like, okay, I'm not sure. I'm not sure what to respond to them when they say that, because it's not an everyday thing that you hear. It's the things that you guys do is not what everyday people go through. Only other firefighters or other first responders go through what you go. So from being from the outside looking in, it's just like, man, I want to be there for you, and I want to listen and have an open ear and make sure mentally and physically that you're able to carry on and do what you do for not only me, but the population of the area that you protect.
Do you feel like you were unprepared to maybe even help him get to that point?
Yeah, I'm completely unprepared because, for one, I'm not a psychologist.
Right.
That is something for a professional. The only thing that I was prepared for was just being a friend. But to hear what I heard from that and be able to respond, and not only that, your response matters too, because if you respond incorrectly or whatever, it could have an adverse effect.
I think being a firefighter, having friends that are just willing to listen is almost more than enough.
Yeah.
And that's my personal point of view. And I think for a lot of first responders, we have our really close friends that we do divulge that information, because that's a part of us that we don't share very often, unless it's with our significant other, a psychologist, or with the other firefighters, because they get it.
Right.
So when we do have those friends that are really, really close to us, our brothers that or sisters, or just people that we grew up with that are our friends, they're not blood or anything, that when we divulge that information and our feelings about that job and what we saw, we're not expecting you to have the answer for us, but you're an outlet. And I think sometimes we start, and I've actually been at fault of doing this, is I'll start talking about it with a friend, and I don't even think to myself that they just might be ready to hear what I'm about to say. It might just be a little bit too much, but I don't, I've been at fault. It wasn't a thought that crossed my mind. To me, it was, I'm talking to my friend.
Right.
They're going to hear about what I'm saying. And this is something that's bothering me. I'm just going to talk to my friend. And then when they hear it, they're just like,
wow.
They don't have anything with we don't know
what to say.
Right. And it was unfair to them.
Yeah.
Right. Because now I'm putting them in this emotional state, the situation of hearing their friend talk about these issues that they're having. And they're like, I want to be the friend that you want me to be right now, but I have no idea what to say.
Right. A true friend is not going to consider it unfair. It's more along the lines, for me at least, it's like, man, how can I help? Mm-hmm. How can I help? Not that I want to carry your burden or anything, but let's ease the pain a little bit, and let's both be comfortable, and let's both, find out and get to the bottom of this, and release whatever this is that's holding you down, or just being an outlet to talk about something. A lot of people don't realize is that you carry all these things with you, whether or not you feel you don't carry it, but at the end of the day, when you need to shut it off, you can't shut it off, because the slightest thing can trigger you.
Right. Well, and that's why I wanted to ask if you thought it was a little bit unfair, or if you were prepared or whatever, because, I'm sure it wasn't like, hey, Justin, I got to talk to you about something. It's pretty bad. You mind taking a listen? It was you guys are shooting the shit. And then all of a sudden it just goes into it. I promise you, it happens a lot, especially with us, because when we're with people that we're comfortable with,
it flows.
We want it. We're like, oh, now's a chance to get it out.
Right.
And it's almost subconscious. Like, now's a chance to get it out with somebody I trust, somebody I'm comfortable with. I'm just going to tell them how I feel about this thing. And then we don't even realize that, especially with our friends that aren't in the service, that we don't even realize that, fuck, we're giving them a lot. We're giving them, and it could be a call that lasted 5 minutes, but the effects that had on us when we start talking about it, our friends are like, how do I respond to that?
Right.
I feel like you want me to be this friend for you right now, but you're asking me a little bit something more than I'm prepared for. And the fact that you had the wherewithal to just to be like, you know what, maybe he just wants me to listen right now.
Absolutely.
Or
Yeah.
and that's basically where I wanted to show is that really I think a lot of it, if you're a friend of a civil servant and you're not within that life, you are within that life because you're their friend.
Right.
But just listening to them is more than enough. Trust me, more than enough, because that's what they're needing right then and there.
Mm-hmm.
From my perspective, and I think for a lot of us as well. When you're thinking about your friends, I'm sure it's not an everyday thing that you wake up and you're like, I'm wondering how all my civil service friends are doing. Right. Obviously, you still have your own life. And
like everything. For me, okay. So for me, especially with everything that's going on in this world right now, I've reached out to quite a few of all my PD and FD guys and been like, hey, you guys okay? Because of the stuff that's happening in Minnesota, or is it Minnesota or Missouri or whatever, where all that nonsense is going down, especially like up in Austin. I got a lot of friends that are up in Austin, and it's just like, whoa, man, you see the riots and you see the fires and you see all this stuff. And it's just like, because it's a combination of fire, ambulance, and PD that are out there doing everything. There's a lack of help. These guys are on 24 and 48-hour shifts with nonstop, just going and going and going. So I've reached out to quite a bit of them just to make sure it's like, hey, y'all all right? I don't know if there's anything that I can do, but man, it's
but they are in your mind with something like obviously what's going on
right
now.
On my mind more now than on a when everything is quote unquote normal in the world.
Right. And I get that a lot too. Like the other day, one of my friends saw a fire on Facebook, and it was like one of those live video feeds that the news was covering, and they tagged me in it. They tagged me like, hey, are you there?
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'm a firefighter,
but I'm not at that one.
But no, I'm not at every single fire you see. Or no, I'm not at every big disaster you see or anything like that. And I think that sometimes people we get that a lot, and I get that a lot too. Is like, oh really? My cousin's a firefighter in San Antonio.
Do you know who he is?
So and so. Have you met him before? Do you know who he is? I was like, hey, as close and as tight knit as the fire department and civil service is, it's just way too big to know everyone.
Right. Hey,
I mean, and I give this example, like even in Houston's a 4,000 person department, right?
Yeah. I volunteer with a lot of them,
and there's just no possible way that you're going to be able to know everybody. Even in my department is a small 200 and something, 270 around, staff department, and there's still people that I haven't met yet.
Right.
Just because of the different shifts, or they work at a station across the city.
Right.
And it's just like, yes, there are some firefighters out there that have made a name for themselves because they did something good.
Right.
They came up with some training, something like that. So yeah, okay, cool. Yeah, I've heard about them, or I may have met them in passing at a conference or at some training and stuff. But it's never we not all of us know each other.
No, yeah.
It just doesn't work that way.
So a little more background about myself. I've been a volunteer with the Houston Livestock Show and Rodeo Safety Committee.
Which is really huge. It's actually the largest rodeo in the nation.
It is. Mm-hmm. The Houston Livestock Show and Rodeo is one of the largest rodeos.
It's
actually is the largest rodeo, sanctioned rodeo in the United States. And so I've been a volunteer with the HLSR team for the last 10 years total. The last 8 I have been on the safety committee. I'm assistant captain with the safety committee. And so where I'm getting at with that is basically if you're within the confines of 610, OST, Kirby, and Fannin, if you dial 911, it goes to my call center. My call center dispatches one of us being either a fire, a medic, or a safety crew member. I'm going to say safety crew member because we're not police. There is paid police officers at the Houston Rodeo to do their job as a police officer. But as on the volunteer side, there's a lot of doctors, nurses, firefighters, EMTs, paramedics, investigators that are all volunteer because we have to take care of everybody that is within those confines of 610, OST, Kirby, and Fannin. So there's the little history about the safety committee. It was actually started by HFD a little over
Houston Fire Department.
Yeah, Houston Fire Department. A little over 50, I think, years ago, maybe longer. And it only comprised of about, I think, 30 or 40 people back when it first started. And you had to be HFD, and that was all it was. There's those few people. The rodeo was quite tiny back then. And now it's blown up to something over, wow, how many thousands? I think there's about somewhere between 2,000 and 4,000 people that volunteer on the Houston Safety Committee, or the Houston Rodeo Safety Committee. So it's comprised of now firefighters, paramedics, there's lawyers on it. We have different divisions. You know, we do have a fire division because fires do happen at the rodeo, believe it or not. There is a medical division, so we assess patients. People do get injured quite often. There's a lot of babies born at Houston Rodeo, believe it or not.
You can't miss that rodeo, man, especially when there's a good show going on.
There is a lot of pregnant. Even Maren Morris this last year for rodeo, she was 9 months pregnant when she sang out there on stage. Yeah, and we also have the investigation side whenever there's a carnival accident, or if there is a fight, or if nowadays if there's a shooting. You know, I mean, I hate to even say it like that, but in the society we live in, it's not unheard of for somebody to sneak a gun in.
Yeah,
and you know,
no matter how good anybody's security is, a lawbreaker is going to break the law, and they're going to figure out how to do it.
Right. You know, so hopefully I'll be able to get Josh in onto
he's pushing me to get involved.
I'm pushing him to get involved and volunteer. So,
but man, being so busy, as busy as I am right now. But you have this experience, right?
Because I have all this experience with all these first responders, the real first responders that do this for a living. This is their day in, day out, you know, life. And so I feel privileged to be able to work with these guys or volunteer with these guys, you know, for the 20-ish days of rodeo that I'm there with.
Yeah, and trust me, with something that big, being able to ask for that amount of first responders that do that nonstop all the time, that's your career. I mean, you're just not going to find it. So the fact that you even decided to become a volunteer is, as a first responder, as a civil servant, is actually, we appreciate those people that are willing to kind of, I guess, take up the slack, for lack of a better term.
Yeah, a little bit. You know.
But
and where people might get misconstrued is that we go out there and we party every day, you know, while we're on shift.
Right.
No, it's not. We're out there, and there's a lot that happens behind the scenes that you, the public, don't know about.
Mm-hmm.
And it's us, the volunteers on the safety committee, that keep you from knowing about that, because we want you to have a good time at rodeo and focus on the rodeo and the concerts and the carnival. And we don't want you to focus on the people that do get hurt or sick or trampled or whatever happens at the rodeo, because our focus is for y'all to be having a good time and let us take care of any patient or whoever needs help.
Right. I want to ask you something about how the general public looks at firefighters specifically, because this is what makes us fire. But your outlook on them was you actually had some firsthand experience when you were young. Yeah. You got to go to a fire station. You got to actually meet the guys. You had a friend whose father was a firefighter. So you were able to really get a good sense and understanding of how they were, what they were really like. But do you think, in general, the general population, do you think that point of view is a little skewed due to Hollywood? Because that's my thing.
Man,
that's one of my hypotheses, so to speak. And this podcast is my testing of that hypothesis.
So
I really do honestly think that the general public thinks we're all the same, right? I think the general population thinks that we all have the same mindset. We all look very similar. We all have very similar backgrounds. We all have this, and it's not further from the truth. And part of this podcast is to show that we are so diverse,
absolutely.
so diverse. I mean, when it comes to beliefs and religions and color of skin and sexual orientation and all of that.
I'll tell you what, there's actually one of the closest comparisons to FD and FD lifestyle is actually a television show that I watch very religiously on Fox Network, and this is no promotion. I don't own any rights to anything like that, but it's 911 Lone Star.
I hate that show.
Okay, so
I want you to tell me what you think about it, and then I'm going to go ahead and reiterate what I talked about with my wife on that podcast, because I don't think you've heard it yet. But I'll go ahead and let you know.
Okay, so which of course Josh is probably going to have a different opinion.
Absolutely.
Obviously, it's going to have a different opinion. Me, from being the non-first responder, I look at it as the drama effect. I look at it as a drama effect, but drama aspect of it. It's a great drama show. As far as depicting the actual real life of a first responder, probably not. But the elements that it puts into place, as far as, especially for the newest series for 911 Lone Star, that takes place in Austin, Texas. They have a transgender. They have a Muslim chick. They've got another gay. The main actor, his son is gay. And it's so it melds all of these different aspects that are what actually happened in the real world into this drama storyline. But that's all this is. It's just a dramatic storyline. It's nothing that I believe would actually happen in real life. The drama, everything behind it is it's fun, it's entertaining.
So you think the general public watches this show? What do you think that the ideas they're getting from that show in particular?
I would hope, honestly, I would really hope that they would see the things that are the things that are happening within this show, and I would hope that the population is actually smart enough to realize that this is Hollywood and this is not real life. One of the original episodes on the first series, 911, that took place in
LA County,
one of the firefighters is in a car accident and gets impaled by a piece of rebar through his head.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, you know what? You could be a Christian, you can be an atheist, you can be anything. You could have all these different beliefs on who these outside. But anybody that gets impaled with a piece of rebar, construction rebar, which is a better part of anywhere between 3/4 to 1 inch thick in diameter, through your skull, okay? You don't have to be a doctor, nurse, rocket scientist, or anything like that. But to be impaled with something, close to being 1 inch in diameter through your skull and still be alive, and also without any scarring, dude, that's Hollywood, man. So there's a lot of Hollywood involved in it. I just like it because it's an interesting drama. And
what kind of idea do you get from these shows when they show you how the firefighters react with each other, how they depict the life of the firefighters in those shows? What kind of idea do you get from that?
It looks, there's some aspects of it as far as why I see the familyness of it.
Okay.
Y'all sitting together, eating together, in the mess hall or whatnot, which I've seen that firsthand, and being able to eat in a mess hall at the station.
Okay.
That's cool but as far as the when it comes down to the acting bit of it, there's some real, mostly fake.
All right. Well, I'm going to tell you why I do not like 911. So when it comes to just the TV shows, I think the ones that get it closest to being right, not at all right, but closest to being right, would be Rescue Me and Chicago Fire.
Okay.
The closest to getting it right without not at all being close to right.
That's more drama.
Right. The 911 series, again, this is just my opinion.
Right.
All right. The first one, within the fire department and how they depicted that, I think that was a little bit more realistic to today's firehouse. You know, you have a whole bunch of different people, stuff like that. But the whole being different aspect and stuff like that isn't thrown in your face.
Right.
This new one, Lone Star.
Oh yeah.
Pissed me off.
It's really, there's like, they're trying their hardest.
That series gave Texas firefighters a bad name to the general public.
Yeah.
And here's why. They go off and get a New York City firefighter to come in and
revamp the place
because a certain station had a really bad incident and all but one of that shift's crew survived. And, you know, and so they're looking for a lieutenant or a captain to come in and kind of revamp the place and kind of get that station going again, to get the vibe going again. But what they did is that they showed that Texas firefighters had, and this is my opinion again, I got to make sure I let everybody know that Texas firefighters were too close-minded.
Right.
For them to staff the station.
We're the hillbillies down south.
Right. And so they threw it in your face, right, by making it as diverse as they had to make it.
Right.
They had to find a Muslim woman. They had to find a transgender, black transgender.
Right.
Female to male. They had to throw in the gay son.
Yeah.
They had to throw in the minority rookie.
Yeah.
They had, and then of course you have this captain that's very metrosexual, right?
That has cancer.
And then
you have to throw in.
He does have cancer. Yeah. But then they also kept that one Texas firefighter, but
he's got a black wife.
He's in an interracial relationship, right? And it's like, holy fuck! Do you really think Texas doesn't have any of those?
Yeah.
Do you really think that Texas firefighters don't have any of those, that you had to throw it and make it such a big deal that you were doing this for a station? No,
Hollywood.
You don't have to do that because we already have all those things.
Yep.
We have all those things. We have them.
Yeah.
Texas firefighters around the world, California, like any fire department has that diversity within the fire department, right? But I think this show made it look like Texas firefighters or Texas in general, when it comes to the fire department, just doesn't have those because it was such a huge fucking deal to make it that way.
Yeah.
And it's not that big of a deal because we already have it.
Right.
The only thing is yes, it might not all be concentrated to one station, but they made it such a big fucking deal that it was just like, you guys are making Texas firefighters look racist, homophobic, sexist. I mean, like, we're none of those things.
Right.
We're none of those things. None. And that's why, and it wasn't so much about the calls that they were going on and stuff like that. And just know, whenever you watch these shows and they go on these calls, a lot of them are like once in a lifetime calls.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
It's not like every day we're pulling people out of burning buildings.
Most of my buddies with HFD, they're going on calls to pick up homeless, drunk people that want to ride.
All the time. So 98% of our calls are what we consider quote unquote BS calls.
Yeah.
BS to us, person calling 911 is obviously feeling like they have an emergency, and that's fine. But to us, we're like, you probably could have called an Uber. But that's what it is with that show. I was just like, man, no. I can't get behind it. I can't. Yeah. The first one, all right, I can get a little bit behind. It made sense a little bit. Obviously, is extremely dramatized.
Yes.
But the second one, this Austin Lone Star, I could not get behind it just because of what I thought when people watch this outside of Texas, because people watching it inside of Texas, some of them might like it, but I think it gave the general public a really bad generalization of what Texas firefighters are and how the fire departments work, because that's not how they work.
Completely 100% agree.
We are way diverse.
Way
diverse. And yes, we do have a bunch of different belief systems, a bunch of different backgrounds and lifestyles and everything else, but that doesn't stop us from doing the job. No. And it doesn't keep us from loving each other and having issues from each other just
Right.
because we're different. None of that exists. And
Right.
I think that new 911 show made it look like there was a way bigger problem than what there actually is. And I just couldn't get behind it. I couldn't.
Right.
And that's, again, it's my point of view. I can't.
And in all honesty, just for my saving grace, I watch it more for the drama aspect than anything else, because I just find it interesting. It obviously it hits you in a different way because this is your life.
Right.
This is your life, and this is the way Hollywood depicts your life, which is it's just a very poor depiction of it.
Yeah.
I personally like it because I love Liv Tyler and
okay, so we all love a bunch of that. I got my piece in.
No, it's all good. It's all good. I'm glad, it's good to you hear it from two different sides. And I've never spoken to anybody about this particular TV show. And so it's good to hear that opinion.
Right.
And it's good,
there could be some firefighters out there that actually absolutely love the show. I don't agree with them.
Yeah, it's not going to be knocking anybody.
No, I'm not. Again, it's just my opinion. But
yes, I completely agree, and I can totally see what you mean by that from an outsider looking in and seeing, but yet seeing both sides.
Yeah, well, you're a little bit more involved, so you understand the difference.
Right.
But I think people that don't have your background or have that involvement, when they see Hollywood depicted like that, they almost want to put a little bit of a truth to it. And then they'll go off and see, a firefighter in, Austin City firefighter now. Like, is your station really like that? Are you guys really that sexist that you don't want a female firefighter on your crew? Are you really like that? And it's like, no, it's not like that at all. For us, it's, can you do the job? When the shit hits the fan, are you going to be able to drag me out? Yes. Cool. You're my brother. You're my sister.
It's also this. It's looking at how they revamped that fire station and turn.
Oh my God.
Okay. You know what? As many fire stations as I've been to, I have not seen a single one that looks anything like that. The locker room, the bathroom, just the galley. The head, the kitchen area. None of it looks like that at all.
No. I will say there are some fire stations that are like, because we have
like maybe a brand spanking new one.
Yeah, we have some really big fire stations in our department, like probably bigger than they need to be.
Yeah,
but that's the heads. That's the city and the heads.
Right.
But
I'll tell you what. Go out. How many? I don't know how many exactly fire stations there are within the city of Houston, the Houston Metroplex that HFD responds to. But there's a few of them that I've been to, and me knowing also this, that their fire trucks are very poorly maintained. Their ambulances are poorly maintained. Their buildings are poorly maintained. The driveways to get in and out, the plumbing. I mean, how can a fire department function without proper plumbing?
And now you're getting into the whole politics
of
that. And that, HFD guys, we feel you. Yeah, I'm with you guys. I support you guys 110%. And I'm sorry what's going on with you guys right now. But aside from all that, let's get back to your feelings on what it's like. Now I want to get more personal. What is it like having me as a friend that's a firefighter? And have I ever started just divulging shit that you're kind of like, whoa? I don't think I have. I think I'm pretty reserved.
You never really have, because I'll tell you this: 99% of the time, if I'm speaking with another friend of mine that's FD or civil or first responder, usually the only time that things come about is after quite a bit of alcohol. And I guess it's that liquid courage, really, and I'm not trying to say that all my, first responders and firefighter friends they're all alcoholics or anything like that.
Right.
But to be able to talk about something, it's just like, I'm sure it takes a lot to be able to release that information. It's not something that you're just going to go off and talk about it to somebody random. And even being under the influence, to have a little bit of that liquid courage in them to tell somebody as close as Josh and myself are, you got to be able to talk. And also there's a time and a place, because most of the time that Josh and myself have hung out, it's either on a softball field or maybe we're at a bar, but there's always a crowd, and maybe he doesn't want to feel like he needs to talk about that stuff in front of a crowd. And so more of an intimate setting. So I think maybe, it's probably been like once or twice that you might have even mentioned anything, or that I've even come across and asked you, hey man, I saw this on the TV. Were you there?
Right.
Knowing the agency and the location of the incident
Of where it worked.
of where it was.
Yeah.
And so,
well, how does it make you feel having me as a friend that's a firefighter? Like,
you stay on my mind, you along with a lot of my other, because the things that the media portrays and the things that I see and watch on the news, it's like, depending on what part of town it's at, it's like, man, you know what? Let me make a phone call. Let me reach out. Let me check. I know if we're hanging out, I'm in good hands. If anything were to ever happen, I've got a trained professional with me. I feel lucky just to have you aside from you even being a first responder, I'm lucky to have you as a friend, but then to add on top of that it's even better. It's icing on the cake.
Do you think if I wasn't a first responder, we would have a different type of relationship in that? And I guess what I mean by that, do you think maybe it would be more of a closer to an acquaintance type thing? Or do you think that because of your background, you're able to understand a little bit more about how and what I deal with, that you're able to be a little bit more closer?
I honestly believe that because of my background, and we can kind of agree on a level.
Mm-hmm.
Not that, I don't do what you do for a living. I play a cowboy and Indian for the 20-something days out of rodeo, and I get to play a first responder for those 20-something days out of rodeo. And so I believe with that experience that I have for being a volunteer, and also my past experiences and what has happened, I believe that's brought us closer, because we can sit there and have a conversation about it and it not be completely one-sided.
Do you consider yourself part of the fire life, just having so many friends?
I can't really, I'm not going to say that I'm a part of the fire life, but I guess, yeah, I kind of can, because I do have to go to, I have to bury somebody on Friday.
Sorry to hear that.
No, it's okay. This Friday on the 14th, we're going to go in memory of
somebody. You don't have to say their name.
And it's well known, but I'll leave that out for now. And firefighter,
mm-hmm.
and firefighter, volunteer, good friend, known him for a long time, untimely demise. And so I know when I'm going to go to this memorial and funeral on Friday, I'm a part of this fire life, because it's going to be mainly first responders. It's going to be a lot of fire. There's going to be a lot of FD out there, but also there's going to be a lot of volunteers too.
Yeah.
So there's going to be a lot of volunteers. And so I've immersed myself in this culture, and I've immersed myself amongst all these people. I guess you could say, yeah, all my volunteer buddies, they're not just buddies, they're family.
Right.
So,
and I can tell you, just you being my friend, I consider you part of the fire life, because just because you're involved with me, right? Just because you're my friend, you're somebody that I can talk to. I might not let you know everything that's on my mind and stuff like that, but you're definitely somebody I can confide in, and you are a part of the fire life because you are somebody that actually helps me be a firefighter. You know what I mean? And I don't think that don't gets portrayed enough to first responder friends, is that we don't really get to tell people, or we forget, or we take for granted, or whatever. And I've done it, how much we actually need you guys in our lives, and we forget to express that. We forget to express how much we appreciate having friends that aren't firefighters, that we can kind of forget sometimes, or have an outlet, or whatever the case may be, go smoke a stogie and have a scotch, and just hang out and relax
Absolutely,
and talk
man.
about bullshit. And you are a part of that fire life, whether you think so or know it or not. You are a part of that fire life because you're a part of somebody that's in direct contact with it. You
Right.
are. And I want to say thank you for being
Dude,
that friend.
awesome, my brother.
I want to say thank you for
Always.
being that friend. I consider you a brother. I consider you someone that when I'm having a bad time or a bad day, and then all of a sudden there's like a little get together and you're there, you bring light. You help me remember that my job is my job, and yes, it is my life because it's what I do. It's part of who I am. But you allow me to actually remember that it's not all who I
No,
am.
yeah, yeah.
It's not all my life.
It's got to be hard to come home and not bring home work with you.
And it happens, and we have those. Sometimes we have those calls, and there's a lot of us that are able to separate. And sometimes, like I would say, 99% of the calls I go on, I forget. Like it was
Just second nature.
It was another day at
You're just
it was another day at the job. Yeah. But there's those few that stick with you. So, well, Justin, I really do appreciate you coming on. I appreciate you giving your.
Hey, you know what? Thank you for letting me be here, man. I've enjoyed this.
Yeah.
I really have. It's good. This is another level that I get to share with you and learn more and more and more about you as a person, you as a firefighter, you as a friend, and hear more and open up my mind to the fire department lifestyle.
Well, what kind of advice would you give somebody that's a friend of a firefighter that maybe not have the same background as you do? What kind of advice would you give to them so they maybe might better understand and or just be that friend that you think we need? Well, what kind of advice would you give?
Have an open mind, and don't be quick to judge. Don't be quick to judge, and always have a listening ear. There's so many emotions that rush through you, no matter what kind of call it is, because there's some of those calls that you'll probably get that your life flashes before your eyes. You can kind of see it, but then there's some of the calls that you get that's just second nature to you that, like you said, you forget. The ones that you bring home, to be a friend of FD, just be that. Be a friend. You know what? Be a friend. Be a listening ear. Be open arms, because you're not going to tell everybody everything.
Right.
You're not going to tell everybody everything, and just in that moment that somebody opens up to you, just be a listening ear. It could take 5 minutes. It could take 5 hours. Who knows? I know we don't always, everybody has every bit of time to reach out to somebody or even be a listening ear. But for those few minutes, even if it is just for a few minutes, listen. You never know what, that could do for somebody.
Would you change anything about your role as a friend to a civil servant?
I believe I'm a good friend for a civil servant. I don't think there's really anything else that what I already don't do. If there's something is, I'm sure I would hope that a friend would be able to inform me about. But man, I'm usually always there for my guys. I'm always there for them.
It's definitely much appreciated. Justin, trust me. All right, man. Well, again, thank you for coming on. Thank you for coming on What Makes Us Fire. And before we leave, I always ask this one question, or I keep forgetting to ask it, but I'm going to ask it. In your point of view, what do you think it is that makes us fire?
Wow. Okay. So as when you say what makes us fire, as far as you're talking about the show,
I'm talking about you being in the fire life, you having firefighter friends, you've seen what you've seen, you've dealing what you've done. Out of all that, what does it mean what makes?
What I tell you what, it takes a special person, definitely. It takes somebody that has a lot of courage. It takes somebody that has a lot of balls, or ovaries if you're a woman. And to get out there and do what you do, wow, it takes a lot of it means to be completely selfless and to care about. You have to be able to care about a stranger more than you care about yourself. Wow, when was the last time that you as a person have cared more about the random guy walking down the street than you've cared about your own life? Because this firefighter is willing to run into a burning building to save somebody that they have never met in their entire life. This firefighter is willing to put their thumb in somebody's bullet hole to keep you from bleeding out from somebody they have never met that have no emotional attachment to it. This firefighter is ready to extract you from a car. This firefighter is ready to deliver your baby. This firefighter is ready to dive into a cold, rushing floodwater, lake to come and save maybe even your dog or you or whatever, because that's what they do. That's what makes them fire. It's to have any just regular random Joe think that they can do what these guys do every day, day in and day out. You got something wrong with you, man, because it takes a heart of gold and a heart of stone to be able to be what these guys do. I've experienced some of what they do, not a lot. I've experienced some of what they do firsthand. And like I said, I play volunteer with HLSR and a lot of HFD for my 20-something days out of the year. But for what these guys go through on a day in and day out basis, man, wow, my hat's off to them.
Well, thank you. Thank you. I'm going to let you go ahead and get going. I know you got dinner tonight with your mom and dad.
Yep.
Man, it's been awesome having you on, brother.
Dude, this is a great conversation. I'd love to be able to do it again. Thank you again for having me on What Makes Us Fire. Dude, I feel very privileged. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, guys. Take it easy. All right, everybody. That was Justin. I told you, he's a pretty damn good guy, isn't he? I loved his stories and what he did and how he understands or tries to understand the job, and really truly just understands that sometimes we just need a friend. I want to say thank you to Justin again for coming in, sharing his story, sharing his point of view. And to all of you out there, remember, please follow us, What Makes Us Fire podcast. We have the Instagram account at What Makes Us Fire, the Facebook account, the Twitter account, both at What Makes Us Fire. We also have a TikTok, guess what, at What Makes Us Fire, and a YouTube channel, What Makes Us Fire space podcast. And you can also email me at whatmakesusfire@yahoo.com if you guys have any questions, if you have any comments, something you want to tell me, you're looking for more information, please reach out. I am constantly on my phone, so you probably will hear back from me. What Makes Us Fire family, thank you guys for listening. Thank you guys for tuning in. Stay tuned for the next episode. It'll be coming on Sunday, and it's going to be another firefighter. His name's Kurt, and his story is pretty unique because when you look at him, you don't think firefighter. Y'all, have fun. Stay safe. Peace.